Awesome. I'll let him know.
Please give your full attention here.
Yes. Yeah, and this is one thing where I know safety is not everyone's favorite subject, but it is very important. I have been in student groups before that have been locked out of our lab space because the administration was not convinced that we were going to be safe. And that's something here where like all of these tools are actually very dangerous. You can hurt yourself. I have, there's a like sanding wheel back there. I have thrown parts across the room on a sanding wheel, and that's the sort of thing that like can hurt people and can get us in hot water with the administration, and also just like hurting people is bad. We should not do that. And I don't think being safe is that difficult, but it requires attention, and we have a program that we're going to talk about in a little bit about how to make sure that everyone is qualified for the tools that are in the lab. Cool. So the first thing is there are lots of different machines back there, and there are lots of ways to get hurt. The bandsaws are saws that move very fast, and there are things that are called saw stops. We do not have them, and so like it doesn't care if it is a part or your finger. All sorts of sanding wheels. Those you can accidentally sand your own skin. You can throw parts. And then drill presses. Again, I've tried to drill things and had the drill actually pick up the part and start spinning the part, and that's something that we don't want to do here. Cool. So usually when accidents happen, there's two main things that happen. The first is something that is actively hazardous. So this is a saw blade, a drill bit, and then that can almost always be managed. And so the second part really is when it is not being managed well. So that is if somebody doesn't know how to use the part, or doesn't know how to use the tool. If somebody does know how to use the tool, but it isn't paying attention or is very tired. If somebody is paying attention, knows what they're doing, and somebody else runs up behind them and bumps them. So these are things that we have to be very careful of, and you need to make sure that one, everyone knows how to use the tool they're using. Two, the person using the tool is actually paying attention to what they're doing. And three, it is a safe environment where other things will not distract them or cause them to do something they shouldn't be doing. Yes, okay. So there's really a couple of things here. The first big category is be aware. So know what is happening around you, know what a tool sounds like, and know that it is okay to offer help to somebody. So like, if you are using the drill press and it is your first time, you haven't used it for 6 months, like feel free to go ask somebody who knows what to do with the drill press. If you haven't used it in 6 months, but you're confident and you start it up and something sounds funny, well, go get somebody to help, because the drill press sounding funny might just mean that something is wrong with it, and it could come apart and damage the drill press, damage your part, or hurt somebody. Next big category is be awake. I've talked about this a little bit before, but seriously, be well rested. Make sure that you aren't tired, and if you are too tired, it is okay to stop and be like, hey, I don't feel safe doing this right now. Next thing is take an active role. So this means that we have to do some policing of ourselves. If you see somebody who doesn't seem like they know what they're doing, or that you know has been up for 18 hours straight, like stop them and check in and make sure that they're doing okay.
Or isn't wearing their glasses?
Yes.
It doesn't have their hair tied back? Or
Yeah. Yeah, the next thing is make sure everyone's wearing the appropriate PPE, that is personal protective equipment. So that's making sure you have the right glasses. If you're doing things that need to wear gloves, that you're wearing gloves. If you are working on the machinery back there, you should not be wearing gloves. And so you really need to know what you're supposed to be doing on each of those tools and pay attention to the people, to yourself and the people around you. Last category is report all injuries. So this has two parts to it. The first part is report injuries. I don't know if we actually have a form for that or how that works.
we
Okay.
don't,
Yeah.
but we should.
Yeah.
I think one was made, but it hasn't been shared yet.
Okay.
So that's going to be shared soon.
But it is important to both track injuries, so we know, hey, so and so was using a hand drill and it twisted and they bruised themselves or something happened. The other thing though that is important is also near misses, and this is the one that I think gets swept under the rug a fair bit, where you're doing something and something happens, you're like, oh well, nobody got hurt, no one else really saw that, I'll just not report it. And like, the way we make sure things like that don't happen again is we hear, okay, Alex was working on the drill press, something happened, okay, let's figure out why that happened and how we can prevent it again in the future. And maybe that's more training, maybe that's changing out the chuck on the drill press, like we want to make sure that even if something happens, even if it doesn't hurt anyone, that we address it and so it doesn't happen again. Cool. Basics of shop safety. Work with a buddy, never ever work alone. So there's two parts to that. The first is you guys can watch each other and see whether or not you're doing something wrong. And the second thing is if something happens, there's somebody there to offer help. And so this is a hard rule. Don't be in here working on parts if it's just you. Wear safety glasses at all times. I think the only exception now for when we're in the lab is if we're doing an all-team meeting like this where tools are not working. Otherwise, glasses should be on. Wear closed-toed shoes, so no sandals or flip-flops. No loose clothing or jewelry. Tie your long hair back. There should be an adult, a mentor here in the lab if you guys are working on anything. And last thing is, if you're in doubt, ask the older members or the mentors. This is one of those things where it's really easy to not have used a tool for a couple months, forget what you're doing, and you know, it is bad to force the tool to do what you think it should be doing if that's not what it should be.
Yeah, quick thing for the no loose clothing. If you're working with jacket or long sleeve, anything that's loose or can get near spinning material or blades or drills or something, it can pull your jacket and then pull your hand in or your arm in, which is not good. So either don't wear it or have it back like that or something, just so that doesn't happen. And that's true with gloves. You only use gloves when you're like handling hot materials or like greasy, like with the gearboxes. With anything that's spinning, you don't want to do that because if you're wearing gloves and they get caught, it pulls your hand in. Not good.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the things where, oh, yeah. So, one other obvious thing that happens a lot is if you have a hoodie and you have your drawstrings on your hoodie, make sure those are tucked inside your jacket instead of on the outside. But yeah, this is one of the things where people having their clothing get sucked into machines has killed people before, and we don't want that to happen. Cool. So we've kind of mentioned some of these things before, but some simple steps to not get hurt. The first thing is always watch where the hazardous part of the tool is. So if you're working with a saw, make sure you're paying attention to that saw blade. If you're working with a drill press, make sure you're paying attention to that drill bit. This is kind of obvious, but sometimes it's easy to get distracted and say like, oh, I'm trying to cut a straight line on a bandsaw, so I'm looking at my hands in the line and not paying attention to the saw blade, and you really have to pay attention. The other thing is if a part gets sucked into a machine, just let it go. Try to hit the E-stop if you can and take a step back. This will probably happen most often, or is most likely to happen, hopefully it never happens, on the drill press. It's really easy if you haven't clamped your part down very well to have the drill go in, kind of get stuck, and start spinning your part. So there's a couple things for that. Make sure you're fixturing your parts very well. But you know, if your part does start spinning, just hit the E-stop, back up, and that's all you need to do. Unplug your tools before changing belts, blades. Yes, a lot of these tools have different parts that can be changed out on them. You really do not want the tool to start while you are working on changing a part out there. So make sure it's unplugged, make sure your E-stop is off, make sure the switch is off. Just like as many protections as you can have before you put your hands inside of a very powerful machine is always good. Next one. Okay, so avoid creating trip hazards. So there's two things that can happen if you have long cables running across the floor. The first thing is people can trip and fall, and that's not good, but I think we've all tripped and fallen before. The other thing though that can happen is like if somebody is working, especially with handheld tools that are plugged in, and somebody trips and falls over that cord, that can yank that tool away out of their hands. And this is one of the things where you can have, I think it was yesterday, Alex and Vaughn were, a couple of people, Alex, Vaughn, and Reese were working with grinding wheels, and it's really easy. So these are handheld tools that are plugged in and that have very sharp, fast-moving parts on them. And if somebody walks by, kicks that cord, and yanks it out of their hands, that can really seriously hurt people. Last thing is don't distract or get too close to people working with power tools. Somebody's working with things that you can look at and know that they're dangerous, or even if you're not sure if they're dangerous, don't get close to them. Don't distract them. Let them do their thing. Wait for them to stop and gently, gently tell them, hey, I need to pass by, and pass by. Gently tell them whatever else you need to tell them. Cool. So I've talked a lot about the tools. There's also the robot itself. So if the robot is enabled, treat it just as you would treat any of the tools back there. So hair should be tied back. You should have safety glasses on. You should not have loose clothing next to spinning parts on that robot. Alert everyone nearby when the robot is going to be enabled, or when the robot is going to be enabled. So just call out loudly enabling. Make sure the lane of fire movement is clear of people and objects. If this game is another shooting game, we will probably spend a lot of time repeatedly shooting objects. Do not shoot objects near a door, because probably what's going to happen is somebody's going to walk right through that door, turn right, and get hit in the face. So make sure that where you guys are doing things, nobody's going to like walk there by surprise and get run over or shot. Last thing, similar to the power cords, we're going to have Ethernet cables, and make sure that is not a trip hazard when it is in use. That can damage the robot or cause people to fall. Cool. So we have a whole bunch of lab and shop safety rules. First thing is everyone is required to wear safety glasses at all times. No open-toed shoes or loose clothing in the lab. Please remove or restrain all jewelry on the hands, including rings, bracelets, when using power tools. Remove or restrain necklaces, scarves, lanyards, sweatshirt, drawstrings, etc. Very similar to what we talked before. Make sure nothing gets caught and sucked in. Restrain hair to prevent catching moving machinery. Wearing of gloves when working on moving machinery is prohibited. Nobody may use power tools without someone else present. Unauthorized operation of power tools is prohibited. Make sure you guys have actually completed the safety training for whatever tool you're going to use. Includes both hand tools and then the larger machines back there. Never leave machinery running unattended. If you ever have to step back away from some machine, make sure you turn it off beforehand. No food or drink is allowed in the lab or computer area. We have snacks here. If you ever want to eat or drink, just take it outside. If you're unsure of what you're doing, stop immediately and ask for help. Again, this is whether you're experienced with the tool and just aren't quite sure because there's some funny circumstance, or if you're fairly new to the tool, or if you just haven't used it in 6 months. Clean your machines, your workspace, and put all tools away when finished. There's a couple parts to that. The first part is we want to be good stewards of lab space. Second thing is if we leave tools out, then nobody else knows where they are because the tools are left out. And then third thing is the more cluttered our workspace is, the more hazards can be there without you just thinking about it. Things are going to fall off tables, and even just like a handsaw that falls off the table can hurt people. Last thing is always have an exit strategy or a way to get away from the tool quickly if needed. A lot of those tools back there can be moved around. We always want to make sure that you have a fire exit in case of fire or in case of, oh shoot, something just happened on the tool, I need to back away. Make sure that you have that fire exit and that you know to use it.
Really quickly for these, in the next week or so, there's going to be a giant poster of these rules printed, and it's going to go up in the lab somewhere. I'm not sure where yet. So everyone should know them. If you don't follow them, you'll get a warning. If you still don't follow them, you'll probably be asked to leave the lab for the day. Just because we can't work in a space that's not safe. We don't want people to get injured. So keep that in mind when you're working on tools. Wear safety glasses and use tools properly.
And I just want to note that we're going to be stocking hair ties in the Husky at some point in the very near future. So if you need to be able to tie your hair back, that'll be an option.
And I just want to add one quick thing. It's not on the rules because it should be obvious, but there's no horseplay. You don't throw things for fun. You don't run. Common sense.
What?
Oh, one more thing. Thanks for reminding me. These rules apply to adults too. So like if your parent comes in and they're like, oh, I want to use that tool, but they haven't been certified, they can't. So just keep an eye out and just it's kind of hard to say to your parent like you can't do that, but we sort of all gonna look out for each other, right? Like, isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like if you ever need to tell somebody no, you can't do that, first, you should feel comfortable saying that to them. Second of all, you can always come to a mentor and say like, hey, you know, Vaughn is using a tool incorrectly. Go tell Vaughn to stop, and I will tell Vaughn to stop. Yes.
So really what Karen said about making sure everyone knows, it is safe and important to inform anyone who doesn't know of the safety rules if you're bringing someone into the lab.
Yes.
So if you're not informing someone of the safety rules, that in turn is kind of a breach of the safety because they're unaware of what can happen and what to do to stay safe.
There
We
was
also
a
should
kid
have
in,
enough classes that any, like if you've got a parent who wants to come in and take a look, that's fine as long as they've got safety glasses on. We've got enough of that. And if we don't, let us know so we can order more.
safety, there was a kid in my high school who actually lost his eye, like glass eye for the rest of his life. So like, this is, you know, these are real tools.
And Alex wanted to point out, but like, if you do not follow these rules, there will be consequences for that. And so this is a thing that we are going to be serious about, and that everyone needs to pay attention and respect. Cool. Emergency preparedness. So in all cases of emergency, notify the acting mentor. If something happens, the mentor needs to be informed so that way they can take whatever that important action is. If there's a fire or earthquake, alert others and exit the building. This is important and should probably go without saying. We do have 2 fire extinguishers in the lab. My general rule of thumb that I've always been taught is don't think that you can use a fire extinguisher to extinguish a fire, especially if you have not been trained in how to use it. Yeah. If somebody is injured, report to a mentor and call 911 if serious. Again, we want to make sure the mentor is informed and that we take whatever needed actions we need to. And then there is a first aid kit in the Husky. It is blue, and so just know that if you were looking for it.
Which Husky is it in? Just for
That one.
It's the bottom left drawer of that Husky.
Glasses
And-
in your protection?
What?
And the glasses in your protection drawer?
Yeah, yeah. Which we're gonna be doing groups that are going over stuff later today, so we'll point that out.
Yeah.
We should do that.
Yeah, we can do
Not
that.
everybody's gonna know.
Yeah.
It isn't right now, but we probably should.
Yeah, we can do that.
I think we're gonna put a roster on the wall too, right, with emergency contacts?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
are we?
I think so.
don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so that covers it for Chris's presentation. Thanks for doing that. Escape key. How do you escape without an escape key? Does anyone know?
Up to the top of the screen.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so with that,